Okay, folks, so we're going to take a minute to look at some things you can do for organizing your quiz and even doing some things to make it so you can send students in the right direction for their level in a quiz. So, the first thing is over here on the side, this little toolbar. One of the things you'll see is import questions. So the first thing we're going to do is import a question from an old form that we've done. So maybe you've done some forms or you wanted to create a new one, but you want to use a little of the content from an old form. You can do that by importing from old form and select. Now it's going to look and say, okay, well, I've got this question. And there's only one in this form, but I've got this question here. You can select the questions you want to import that question, and here is the question. Here's a question I've used before. What is your favorite color? So now that question has been added into my form, and I imported it from an old form. So that's really useful. Another thing you might be interested in doing is adding a title and description somewhere in your quiz or form, and basically all that does is sort of make a section or make a heading for certain areas. So I could say here that these are multiple choice questions, and all the questions below here are multiple choice. Now, this isn't true, of course, but it's an example of what you might want to use a title for. So I'm going to preview that, come in here and look, and right here is my title. And that's what that looks like when you do it. So I'll come back out. I think I'm going to get rid of that though. I don't really need a title in here. Um, so I'll click there and use the trash can to get rid of it. You also have the option of adding an image. It might be useful to do an image or a video right before a set of questions, or if you wanted to use an old paper quiz that you'd been using and then use the multiple choice grid or the checkbox grid questions, then that would work really well. So here are your checkbox grid and multiple choice grid, and then you see the image or video above. I'm going to go ahead and do an image. I'm going to click right here, click image, and then I'll do a Google search. I'm going to search for one of my old favorite things from the beginning of the internet, keyboard cat. It's one of the classic old school videos from way back. And this is kind of a cool painting of it. So I'll insert that. And you can see that it's its very own item in here. There's no question associated with it. There's nothing like that. And if I preview, then you can see that it is just thrown in there and there's nothing else with it. So you'd want to make sure of the order, and that if you were going to do a checkbox grid, for example, underneath it, that you'd have that all set to go. I'll get rid of keyboard cat after I click here to edit. And then maybe I'll add a video. Now I've taken the liberty of copying a link URL is the same as a link to the keyboard cat video. So I'll paste that in right there, and now I can select that video if I'd like to add it. I'm not going to add it. It'll look just the same as the other, but I wanted you to know it was a possibility. The last thing that we'll talk about is sections, and sections are very interesting. If I add a section, now if you look up here, you can see that there is no section, but as soon as I add a section, then this becomes section 1 of 2. So this is a section, and then when you come down, this is where section 2 starts. So we can call this, we'll call this grid questions. And maybe we'll come up here, click on this, and add another section. We'll call this hard questions. Now, as a student, you may not want to send certain students to the hard questions. You may be, or there may be students that you um, want to only have the hard questions. There's a variety of things that could happen. But at the end of the day, what you want to do, if you want to take those sections and use them, then you would need to take a question like this one. Very simple question. And on the vertical dots, we would say, go to a section based on the answer to this one. So maybe this question is the gatekeeper to say, hey, if you get this one right, then you get to go to the hard questions. If you don't get this one right, then you're just going to go to the grid questions. And that way you can guide students. Now, this is very simple. It's not really fleshed out like a real quiz might be, but you get the idea. You can say to this question, you go to a section based on the answer that they give, and then choose where to go based on their answer. So if they get it right, hard questions. If they don't, grid questions. That's the strength of making those sections. So we can go ahead and preview, and we've got this question right here that you will be able to fill out. But you can see that the grid questions and the hard questions, they don't exist here yet because it's waiting to see where to go next. This is just the first section.